Hello again. In this video, we will talk again about data governance in Identity Manager. And Matt, what we like to see in this video?
So in this video, we're going to talk about the IT shop and how data governance fits into the IT shop. So there's two ways. There's publishing resources that are already out there so that people can request access to them. And we also have the capability of employees through the web portal requesting that new resources get created as well. So we're going to talk about both of those and how you can customize those features within the product.
Okay, let's start.
So in previous training, we've talked about governing data and what that means in terms of data governance. So basically, you have shares, folders that you're interested in, things that should have more control over them. Then you govern those resources. You can assign ownership to those resources. Once they're owned, then you have more control over them. You can apply policies to them. You can do periodic recertification, etc. And what we're going to talk about now is the ability to publish resources in the IT shop. And then we'll talk about the request process where somebody can go into the IT shop, request access to those resources, and then run it through a workflow for approval. So here we are in data governance. We're showing governed data. And again, we have this share called Sister Stuff that is owned by one of my sisters, Pam Green, right? This is published to the IT shop. You can actually scroll over here and see that it's been published to the IT shop on this date, right? So this is available for self-service request. The other thing I want to show is that if I go to changed resource master data and I go assign organizations, currently there is no restriction list set here. So by department, location, or cost center, neither of these are set. So if I were to say go Matty Co departments and say only people in the Muse family are able to see this in the IT shop, then anybody else who didn't have this set as their department would not even be able to see it. They wouldn't be able to request access to it. As it is right now, I have no restriction list set, so any employee can go in and request access to this resource. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to start that request. I'm going to switch over to a desktop machine right here. And here you see I'm logged in as an employee, Andrew Bonato. Andrew Bonato is logged into the web portal. He's logged into his desktop machine. He's got a Windows 8 machine here. And he's going to go to the IT shop and request access to a file system resource. So right here, here's your file system access. Service category is resource access. And I'm going to request. So requesting file system access, here we go. And Sister Stuff. That's the published resource that Andrew Bonato is interested in getting access to. So he's going to go ahead and select that. Now, by default, there's a few different views here. Right now, you can see a tree view, but we also have just a list view format as well that you can use. The tree view is basically if you have DFS synchronized into DGE, then we can display the IT shop resources in a tree view similar to how your AD integrated DFS would be displayed. But it also works for regular servers as well. They would be all listed under here. So I have Sister Stuff selected. I'm going to go OK. And now I'm going to select the level of access that I want. So as an end user, I say whether or not I want read access or whether or not I want write access. I'm going to leave it at read access. And then the reason is because I want to know what Matt's sisters are reading and writing about. Right? So Andrew Bonato was very interested in knowing what my sister's interests are in the Sister Stuff folder. So he's going to request access to this. And he's going to go right ahead and submit the shopping cart. Shopping cart can be submitted. Yes. And there we go. So the request is in the system. And now I'm going to talk about all the things under the covers that are taking place at this point. So we're going to switch over. I'm going to log out. I'm going to switch back to the manager. Now, what we have set up is a job service. So I'm going to go to the job service here. Here's my job server editor in the designer. You need to have, for this whole system to work, one job service that's set up as data governance connector. Data governance connector, with this server function, this will be the job service that's going to talk to data governance service, right? So the two services are going to talk to each other. Now, in order to do that, you need these two things. The job service needs to be set up as a data governance connector, and the service itself needs to be running as an account that is associated with an employee and one identity manager that has data governance, access managers, and administrators role. So I'll repeat that. Data governance connector, that job service, the service needs to be running as an account that is associated with a one identity manager employee, and that employee needs the data governance identity manager application roles. That is so the job service can talk to DGE. DGE gets a request for, please give me the best fit groups to fulfill a request, or please give me some reporting information. And when DGE is sitting there and it gets a request, the first thing it does says, who are you? Who are you? What account are you? And the answer is whatever that job service is running as. So if it's running as some sort of service account, that's what it is. DGE will then ask, do you have an associated employee for this account? Yes. Do they have data governance roles? Are they allowed to ask the question that they're asking? So that's why it's very important that one job service is set up to have that data governance connector server function, and the account that the service is running as needs to be associated with an employee with the data governance roles. So what happens here is a script is run here, and you can see it. I have it open here, this vi_person_once_org prefill IT shop, right? So this script is the one that's responsible for actually contacting the DGE service to say, please give me the list of groups, right? So if you're watching job queue info, when this is happening, you can see here's an older one that I had right here. It's in history, but you can see this will show up in the job queue, right? And of course, you can look at the current status of that request in the manager, in IT shop, pending request by recipient. Here it is, file system access, approval sequence. And right now we're on the step where the business owner of the resource needs to approve or deny this request. So that's the way we have it set up. Assuming no restriction list, anybody can go into the IT shop who has access to the IT shop, request access to a published resource. That request will then route through the job service that has data governance connector machine role, and then route to the DGE service. The DGE service will then say, okay, here's a resource, here's a person who's interested in accessing it. We need to look at that security and determine what group is best fit to fulfill the request. So you can call it the best fit groups algorithm. There's different names for it. If you look at the designer at the top, you'll see this concept called snake. It's just an internal word, an internal term that we use to describe the algorithm, whereby DGE will examine a resource, a request, a level of access that a person is requesting, and then look at all of the security on a resource and say, okay, here's the group that we think is the best one to fulfill the request, right? And we have documentation around this. So in version 7.0.2, we have this IT shop resource access request guide. This is basically full documentation around the entire self-service workflow, including how to customize, how to set it up, how the algorithm determines best fit groups, etc. For example, if you have a group like a domain local group that's ACLed on a resource, and then nested in that domain local group is a global group, and the people of access are actually in the global group, then instead of suggesting the group that's directly on the resource, the domain local group, DGE will suggest the global group, because that's where the people are. That's the suggested way of providing access to resources. So we will suggest the global group that's nested in the domain local group that's on the resource. So the documentation contains all of the different criteria that we use to determine what's a favorable group versus what's an unfavorable group. We have the same for SharePoint as well. In this particular example, we're doing a Windows file server or Windows file share, so I won't talk about SharePoint, but the documentation clearly describes all of this. Okay, so this is the IT shop request access guide. And I'm going to go to I'm going to log in as the business owner in a second here, but what I have open here is your key troubleshooting area when things are going wrong. So there's two places. Obviously, you make sure you have it set up correctly, have your job service configured as your data governance connector so that the communication works properly. As the DGE server is calculating groups, it's going to log information in its central log here. So here you can see I have the data governance service log open, and you can see that there's some warnings there that during the processing of self-service, it found that domain admins, for example, is ineligible by the processor, right? So domain admins, there's certain groups that we just always find ineligible, but also consider that when I made the request as Andrew Bonato, I requested read access. So DGE will never suggest a group back that provides more access than was requested. So we wouldn't return a modified group or a full control group, etc., right? So looking into the logs, that's where you're going to find some interesting troubleshooting information. In the case that groups aren't being returned, DGE can't find any eligible groups. The log file on the DGE service machine is where you'll find key information here. All right, so at this point, the request has gone through. It's waiting for the business owner to approve. So we're going to go and log in as the business owner. So here I'm at the web portal. So I'm going to log in as my sister, Pam Green. She's the business owner. And I see that I have a pending request. So click on pending requests. You are entitled to approve or deny the following requests. So here's the resource that I own that Andrew Bonato has requested access to. Access will be granted through the following group, the global brother group. So I had set up a group on this resource, which is a global group. The global group is actually nested in another group, the domain local group, and the domain local group is what is ACLed on the resource. So I can quickly show you that. Data governance, manage hosts. Let's just take a look at this guy. So what I'm doing is I'm just going to resource browse in here. I'm going to go to that share so I can show you the security on that share. And here's the sister stuff, folder permissions. And again, when I published this resource, it asked me, which security do you want to use for the purpose of self-service requests? And the default behavior is folder security. So here, when the DGE service gets the request, it's going to look at the folder permissions, right? So here I have a domain local group called the brother, DL, the brother, domain local, which provides read access. Nested within that group is the global group that was suggested by DGE. So even though the domain local group is the group that's directly on the resource, it's the global group that's nested within there that is going to be suggested, right? So going back over to the web portal. So business owner, I'm logged in as Pam. I see the request, I see the group, and I see the reason because I want to know what Matt's sisters are reading and writing about. All right. So I'm comfortable with this. I know who Andrew Bonato is. I'm going to go ahead and approve this decision and go next. Reason for approvals, because I trust Andrew, and save approvals. And that's it from the perspective of the business owner. So here the business owner has said, okay, I'm okay with this. I'm going to approve. But that's not the end of the workflow. Now we're not going to walk through the whole thing here, but it's a fairly simple description. So to check the approval, I can log out as Pam, and I'm going to log back in as Andrew. And I have my request history here. And you can see that I put one through about 33 minutes ago that was denied. I decided here, I'm going to try again. And then workflow. You can see that Pam approved, but then there is no group owner. So at this point, I just created the groups yesterday. I didn't assign an owner, and that's why at this point it's not going through. And right here, you can see the reason why the workflow ended was because we don't have a group owner configured, right? This is a new system that I'd set up. I did not assign owners to my groups. So what needs to be configured is the ownership of these groups so that when we get to this step, the owner of the group can then approve or deny the membership in the group. So once, as a group owner, I approve, and then Andrew Bonato gets placed into that group, the next time he gets that group in his token, he then has access to the resource that he requested to, right? So that's the way it works. It's put the request, goes to the business owner. The business owner gets the result of DGE's calculation of the best fit group for the request. Approve or deny. If the business owner approves, it goes to the group owner. If the group owner is there and set, they approve or deny the request to join the requester into the group, the requester of the resource into the group. And then that person gets provisioned into the group. And then the next time they have that group in their token, they then have access. So this is a walkthrough of the self-service request for resources that have been published to the IT shop.